Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Richard Spithoven from Belay. I see that we have a whole bunch of people joining the webinar, so that's always really good to see that there are so many people joining to talk about a very interesting topic, I would say, for today, and that is Oracle support. How can you start saving cost on your technical support renewal? For today's session, we have prepared a number of topics, but let me first give you a short introduction of the partnership that we as Belay have with DesTech. Because as you probably all know, DesTech is a very good partner of us that is operating out of Canada, in which we have a very powerful partnership. And that powerful partnership is set up based on the fact that we as Belay do have a very deep insight and proven methodology with regards to how to evaluate your existing licenses, your existing deployment and usage of Oracle programs, to reconcile and to determine your compliance position, to identify what possible risks you may have, but also to help customers to achieve cost savings. Whereas DesTech has a very deep understanding of the technology, the deployment models and sales procurement processes that can be leveraged locally in Canada. And by having this partnership in which we combine the best of both worlds, we actually work together to make sure that we can provide our customers the most strategic and specific services and solutions that our customers need to have in order to be equipped with regards to the control that they are typically seeking to have around their Oracle or other software publisher licenses like IBM, SAP, Microsoft, you name it. So together in the partnership, we develop future need buying strategies to maximize your return of investment and to eliminate surprises from a compliance perspective. That's the partnership that we have with DesTech. And for those people that don't know me, my name is Richard Spithoven. I'm one of the managing partners of Belay. Have a deep background working at Oracle within Oracle's compliance department called License Management Services for almost 10 years, headed up a large part of EMEA, and decided after almost 10 years to leverage the knowledge and the experience that I gained at the Oracle side during all those audits and negotiations that I've done during my Oracle days to support nowadays for the last 5 years many different customers across the globe with their challenges and opportunities that they can have with regards to specifically Oracle. Now for today's session, we're going to talk about technical support and what you can do to actually start saving costs on your support bill. But in order to do that, we first need to go through a number of topics during this session. So we will first start to have a look on what are actually the different entitlement documents that you have and how does it actually all relate to the specific technical support policies. Then we're going to zoom into the specific clauses of the technical support policies that Oracle applies. What do they mean? And why are they a pain typically for customers if they would want to do something with regards to their support bill? And we're going to zoom in a bit more on why you might be paying too much towards Oracle as well for your support on an annual basis. And then we'll zoom into how you can start saving cost on your support bill. During the session, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box that we have here in the webinar, because at the end of the session, we will address all the questions that you may have, and we'll open up the floor for any further questions you may have. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the stuff that I'm going to talk about first, and then let's have a Q&A session in case there are any further questions you may have. Now, this is the presentation that I just gave about myself, who I am. You can also see a picture on how I look like. So I would say, let's skip this one. And let's start focusing on the entitlement documents and how does it actually all relate to each other. Now, in order to give you an overview of what specific contractual documents you should actually all take into account to understand what you're actually entitled to make use of, there are many different documents and many different sources that you need to take into consideration to understand what am I actually entitled to make use of. And this graphical overview, I will walk you through how it actually all relates to each other. Because it first always starts with an order form. And in that order form, there is a number of licenses that you typically buy when you start becoming a customer from Oracle. For example, that is the document that says, I bought 2 processor licenses, Oracle Database Enterprise Edition. Now, such order form is always referring to a license agreement. Nowadays, Oracle calls that a so-called Oracle Master Agreement, an OMA. But in the past, Oracle called that a OLSA, an Oracle License and Services Agreement. And even before that, they called that an SLSA, a Software License and Services Agreement. And that specific document is what Oracle calls the general terms and conditions under which you purchase the licenses or support or services like cloud through the order form. Now, if we're talking about on-prem licenses, what you typically have in your order form is that you do not only buy the licenses, like the example said, 2 processor licenses, database, enterprise edition, but you typically would also buy the first year maintenance, 12 months of technical support for the products that you buy through the order form. And because of the fact that that is for the period of 12 months, there is on an annual basis a renewal from the support renewals going forward. So you will see, especially in this example, if you bought licenses in 2012, that you will have multiple support renewal documents that come in every year, typically 3 months before your support maintenance period expires. You'll get a new proposal from Oracle. Now, those support renewals actually are governed by the so-called technical support policies. And those technical support policies are referred to in your master agreement, but also referred to in your support renewals, and as actually specifying under which terms and conditions Oracle continues to deliver the technical support towards yourself. Apart from the technical support policies, there are references made in the documents like the program documentation that is subject to change over time because Oracle makes the program documentation available whenever they come up with a new version of the software. So for example, if you bought licenses here at this moment in time and Oracle Database Enterprise Edition 11G Release 1 was the then latest version, the fact that you continue to pay support maintenance for your licenses gives you also the right to make use of the latest version of the software. Meaning that if Oracle comes at a certain moment with a newer version of the software available, in my example in 2017, they made the Oracle Database 12C Release 1 available, that right to make use of that newest version of the software is governed by the fact that you do have an active support maintenance contract. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that the terms and conditions of that program documentation is therefore changing as well. And the terms and conditions of that program documentation is something you need to comply with. Now, apart from that, there are business practice documents like how to license Oracle on public cloud environments, how to count the number of processors by looking at the processor core factor table, all kind of other business practice documents, BP documents, that are listed into your license agreement that should be taken into account. But for today's session, we're mainly focused in that technical support policies, because that are the terms and conditions that are specifying under which you are renewing the support maintenance for your licenses. Now let's have a closer look on those technical support policies. Because in those technical support policies, which you can find published online, if you go to oracle.com/support, you will find the document, and there are a number of clauses in that technical support policy that are important for you to understand what they actually mean. The first clause that I would want to spend some time on is the so-called license set clause, because the license set clause in the technical support policy actually specifies that Oracle has a different definition of what specific licenses all belong to one, let's say, group of licenses, a license set. And in that definition, Oracle says that all the licenses of a specific program, like all your Oracle Database Enterprise Edition licenses, or all your Oracle WebLogic Suite licenses, or all your Oracle Financials licenses, we're talking about the Business Suite, they are all part of one and the same license set. But apart from that, it also says that all the licenses that do share the same source code are also part of the same license set. So the easiest way to keep this concept in mind is that you may have different database products, Database Enterprise Edition, Database Standard Edition, but also database options like partitioning or management packs like Diagnostic Pack and Tuning Pack. All those database related programs are part of one and the same license set. And therefore, although you may have individual ordering documents that are issued to purchase the different licenses over time, across those different ordering documents, the different products itself that do share the same source code are part of one and the same license set. Database programs is, for example, one license set. Middleware programs is another license set. E-business suite programs is another license set. And that is an important concept to keep in mind when you start looking at your licenses, because the next clause that is part of that technical support policy is the so-called matching service level policy. And what does that matching service level policy actually say? It says that in case you have technical support from Oracle, then all the licenses that do belong to one and the same license set must have the same level of support. In other words, let's say you have 10 different ordering documents, and in every ordering document you bought 10 different processor licenses for the Oracle database. So you have a total of 100 processor licenses for the database. Then Oracle would say either all the 100 licenses need to have an active support contract, or none of them should have an active support contract. You can't say towards Oracle, I only want to have 1 or 2 processor licenses with an active support contract and the rest without. Because of course, Oracle would want to avoid that you are only going to pay for 2 licenses, but applying the benefits like security patches, bug fixes, but also updating the software would be applied on all the 100 licenses. And that's why in this matching service level policy, Oracle requires everything under support or nothing. And in case you would, for example, reduce your usage from, in my example, 100 processor licenses to 70, and you would say to Oracle, yeah, but I only want to continue to have support for 70 licenses, that Oracle will require you to terminate the 30 licenses that you would not want to have in the support. And that will be done by Oracle support providing you a termination letter in which you sign that you will not continue to use the software of those 30 licenses. And only then, if you terminate the license, so it doesn't longer exist going forward, only then you are allowed to license or to have a support contract for the 70 remaining licenses. Now, apart from that, there is in the technical support policies an interesting clause which you probably are familiar with, and that is that Oracle applies as a standard a so-called support indexation. Now, such a support indexation means that Oracle will, by the renewal of the support, increase the support fees by not more than 4% year over year. So what does that mean in practice? Let's have a look at an example. If you look at the example on the screen, you see that there may be at a certain moment in time a requirement to buy 10 processor licenses for Database Enterprise Edition, 2 processor licenses partitioning, and 100 named user plus licenses WebLogic Suite. Now, if you look at Oracle's technology price list, you would see that the list license fee for this complete bill of materials would come down to $588K and a support fee of $129K. Now, let's assume that you negotiate with Oracle and you get a discount of 50%, which then would mean that your net license fee would come down to $294K and your net support fee would be $64K. So far, so good. So you buy the licenses, including the first year support for the 294 plus the 64K, but then the year after, Oracle applies an index on the support fee, meaning that the support fee will increase with 4%. Resulting in the fact that your second year or your first renewal, the second year renewal, would come down to a total cost of $67K. So if you're not changing anything towards your order, your support fees will increase with 4% year over year over year over year. The last years it has been 4%, before that it has been 3%, but you can imagine that if you have bought licenses, let's say 10 years ago, that because of the support indexation, there has been 3 to 4% year over year increase on your support bill. And therefore your support bill is growing and growing and growing and typically causing a lot of headaches for a lot of customers because nothing is changing from a usage perspective, but the support fees that you're paying are increasing. Now, if we then go to the next clause, that is part of that technical support policy, and that is the so-called repricing policy, or like the formal policy says, or the formal clause says, pricing following reduction of licenses or support level. Now, what does this clause actually mean from a technical support policy perspective? In that clause, Oracle states that in case you would want to have a subset of licenses that are part of a single order, and you would want to terminate the support of those licenses, then Oracle reserves the right to recalculate the support fee for the remaining licenses by applying Oracle's then current list price with a maximum discount of 25%. And that is the so-called repricing clause that is typically causing a problem for customers, because they see that over time their usage is changing. They would want to terminate support of certain licenses because they're not using it anymore. But because of this specific clause, Oracle recalculates the support fee for the remaining licenses that you would want to continue to have in the support. But because of the fact that Oracle does this, and because of the fact that they apply the current list price with a maximum discount of 25%, while the initial order is typically being purchased against a way higher discount, such a repricing results in a higher support fee for a subset of the licenses than in case the customer would continue to pay the support for all the licenses that are included in the initial order. Now, Oracle does give some guarantee that such a repricing will not result in the fact that the new support fee will ever exceed the previous support fees paid. But of course, typically, if you would want to reduce your software spend, you would start looking at specific products that you're not using anymore. You would expect that by getting that off your support bill is going down. But the reality is that in 9 out of 10 times, your support bill remains the same compared to what it was before. Now, for those that are not that familiar with this concept, I also included into the presentation an example which explains how it actually works. So if I go back to the previous example that I had, where I had initial bill of materials of a list support fee 129K, and I got 50% discount when I negotiated the initial order, and it came to a support fee of 64K, we of course first have that indexation that I just explained. So in my second year support, the 4% increase from 64K results in an indexation of 67K. The year after, because of the fact that we have another support renewal, there is another support indexation of 4%, which comes down to the fact that my support bill grows from initially 64K to 67K to 69K. Now let's imagine that at a certain moment in time, the WebLogic Suite licenses that I initially bought are no longer needed anymore. And I would say towards Oracle at this moment in time, hey, you know what? I want to get rid of the WebLogic Suite licenses, so take them from my support bill, terminate those licenses, because I don't need them anymore. A lot of people would expect that the 10K that is listed for that specific WebLogic Suite licenses would be something that I could save. But because of the fact that Oracle at that moment in time will apply its repricing policy, where Oracle will recalculate the support fee for the remaining licenses, so in this case, the 10 processor licenses, database, enterprise edition, and the 2 processor licenses partitioning, my recalculated support price for this specific order would come down to 82K, which is even higher than what I actually had to pay if I would renew everything in my renewal. And as a result of that, because of the repricing results in a higher fee than what I initially paid, Oracle will, in this example, be more than willing to terminate your 100 named user plus licenses by WebLogic Suite, but your support fee remains exactly the same. This is an issue that a lot of people will probably recognize, because a lot of people have tried this to see, hey, can we do this to reduce our costs? But then in the end would come down to the conclusion that since there is no financial benefit to achieve, we just continue to renew the support for the whole product set, simply because of the fact that there is the same amount of money that I would need to pay, and there is otherwise a situation in which I would need to give up my use rights for the WebLogic Suite. Now, this is something that is happening a lot, and therefore there are, apart from this, a lot of different reasons why you might be paying too much as well towards Oracle when we talk about your support bill. And just to tell you some examples of what we see quite often in our day-to-day practice over the last 15 years, just to show you here what we typically see. So first of all, there are a lot of customers that do have licenses bought 10, 15 years ago. And those older licenses have, because of that support indexation rule of 3 or 4% increase year over year, therefore an extremely high support fee compared to what they would actually pay if you would need to buy those licenses today. Because you can imagine that if, let's say, licenses have been bought 10 to 15 years ago, and at that moment in time, you may have negotiated 50% discounts, but because of the indexation, your support bill has been increasing so much that those older licenses are actually extremely expensive in support. That's one scenario of why you may be paying too much towards Oracle, because if you compare them with the current pricing, you would probably be better off with a lower support fee. The other thing that we quite often see is that software licenses are no longer required anymore because of the fact that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, when the initial licenses were bought, the deployment strategy actually changed compared to what it initially was. And that is something that we see quite often. So a lot of people have bought licenses at the beginning of a project. There was a bill of material created. People started to think about, okay, what functionalities do we actually start, or do we think we actually need? They start implementing the software. And as they go along, there are changes made into the whole design. And therefore, at the end of the project, or because of the fact that certain functionalities do not actually meet the business requirements, they do have licenses that they no longer need anymore because they're not deploying them anymore. That's another scenario that we see quite often happening, and why a lot of customers do have shelfware licenses in their orders. Another thing we see quite often is that when you as an end user negotiate the deal with Oracle, there are at that moment in time possibly specific strategic products that Oracle would want to add to the deal to sweeten the deal. That can be because of the fact that at that moment in time, there is a specific incentive for sales representatives from Oracle to sell a specific database option or a specific product from Oracle, which is for them that strategic. They get a higher compensation of including that product into the deal. And therefore, in the overall transaction, you get that product as part of the transaction for the licenses that you need. Now, obviously, typically it is chosen to include that into the deal because Oracle is typically then willing to provide a higher discount. But then in the end, don't forget that although your initial discount may become a bit higher because that product was part of the deal to sweeten the deal, you continue to pay support maintenance over the coming years. So that's another scenario of where shelfware licenses are quite often part of a specific order. Other scenarios we see quite often is that especially if customers do buy licenses on a smaller volume, then they typically would get a lower discount. It's really easy to see how it works within Oracle because the discounts provided are typically depending on the size of the total deal. So the more products that are part of a deal, the higher the discount. The smaller amount of products are in the deal, or the smaller quantities, the lower the discounts. It's a volume discount program. And customers that did buy a number of licenses against a low discount level typically would result into a higher support fee, because the support fee is at all times calculated at 22% of the net license fee. Apart from those larger organizations that would sometimes do an investment of 10 or 20 million in net license fees, because then Oracle would be willing to lower the support fees to 20, 19, or 18%. And last but not least, another scenario that we see quite often is that customers do have a number of shelfware licenses in their organization as a result of a merger, an acquisition, or a divestiture. Think about a situation in which you acquire another company and that company is actually having a number of individual Oracle contracts themselves and therefore become part of your estate as well. Or think about divestitures in which in a divestiture a number of licenses are assigned or divested to another entity, but typically you see that during such an engagement or such a situation, there is no clear due diligence done on who's actually using and owning what specific license, and based upon the best knowledge that people have, licenses are assigned from one entity to another entity, which in essence, from a license perspective, is typically not that much of a problem, although it can cause compliance issues. From a support perspective, there is a support bill that is hanging behind it that actually is then your problem if you are the receiving entity that gets that support fee as a recurring basis going forward. So these are just a number of the examples that we see on a day-to-day basis why, statistically spoken, around 85-90% of all the Oracle customers do have licenses in their support bills, which they're actually not needing, but where they're paying support for on an annual basis over and over and over and over again. So then the question is, because a lot of people have been using or trying to find a solution on how can you actually save your costs, the question then comes up, can you actually really save costs on your Oracle support bill? And the answer is absolutely. But you need to understand, obviously, how you can do that. One of the things that you can consider in doing so is by the termination of all of your licenses that do belong to a single order. Because that repricing policy that I was referring to, of course, is only applicable if you would terminate parts of licenses that are part of one and the same order. But if you do have a clear view of what you're actually using, and you do have a clear view that certain licenses that are part of your support bill are actually no longer in use, and all those licenses are part of one and the same order, it's rather simple to terminate or not renew the support maintenance of those licenses. But obviously, it does require you to have a clear view of what you're actually using. And as a reference, a lot of companies do think they know that they are using what they're using, but they don't know what they don't know, and therefore typically being caught by surprise during the course of an audit. So if that is a situation that you would consider, please make sure that you have a clear, complete, and accurate view of what you're actually using before you start terminating the support, because obviously, if you are using afterwards certain products and you find it out later, and you would need to bring the licenses back in support, Oracle would apply a reinstatement fee of 150%, which can be a rather expensive penalty if that is done incorrectly. The other option that you have is that you, of course, do have an opportunity to rebuy only those specific licenses that you actually need. Because especially if you have a number of orders, which includes a small amount of licenses that you're actually using, but the rest is shelfware, then it is up to you to decide if you would want to rebuy the needed licenses and kill the support contract, which includes a large amount of the shelfware licenses. Obviously, that is a financial analysis that you need to make because you need to have a clear view of what the related costs would be and what can be commercially achieved if such a rebuying scenario would be an option. The other thing that we need to warn you about is that the moment that you're considering something like this, you need to have a clear strategy towards Oracle, simply because of the fact that the individual sales rep would not be typically that eager to sell you the licenses if they find out that it is a so-called cancel and replace transaction. Why is that? Because within Oracle, the support organization is rather well protected. And let's imagine a scenario in which you as a customer do pay on your support bill 500K, and you do a rebuy of only the needed licenses where the new support would be 100K, so you would be saving 400K on a yearly basis. Then the moment that Oracle support finds out that this was facilitated by an Oracle sales representative that actually sold you the new licenses, then that individual sales rep will get a clawback on its personal target. And that clawback will be calculated at 5 times the difference between the initial support fee and the new support fee. Meaning that in my example, 5 times 400K, the difference between 500K and 100K, being 2 million, would be added to the individual target of the sales rep. And that is what he individually needs to sell more in order to achieve his targets. So you will see that individual sales reps are typically not that eager to sell you those licenses if they know that this is a cancel and replace transaction. But there are ways on how to build a strategy that you can apply that or can achieve this. The other scenario that you have is that Oracle support typically nowadays offers themselves more and more to renew the support maintenance for a longer period of time. Like I said in the beginning, there is typically as a standard a period of 12 months in which you renew the support maintenance. However, their Oracle support organization is nowadays themselves proactively reaching out to customers, positioning a renewal for 24 or 36 months. That is something that they are typically willing to put on the table, and in return, if you would be willing to make that commitment, they're willing to waive the support indexation. However, the question comes, especially within IT, how many organizations do really want to commit themselves for a longer period of time? because if you've committed yourself today to renew the support for the next 24 or 36 months, you can't change after the fact that you are not going to renew it anymore. So that is a catch-22 that you need to be aware of. Another option that you have is that you are able to terminate just some of your licenses within your order to avoid the support indexations. And there are a lot of tricks that you can apply in there. But of course, the biggest challenge in there is how do you overcome the repricing? Because the repricing will cause you an issue in the sense that if you terminate licenses and you are not achieving a cost saving, why would you do it? Now, there are ways around that, and I will tell you about a number of cases just in a minute. But this is another option that you have. And last but not least, the option that you do have is to migrate or to assign parts of your licenses either to another metric or to another legal entity to separate out the support streams that you currently have in your support bill. And by doing so, you actually are creating a situation in which you create individual support streams for which you individually can decide to stop the support and as such save costs. This is something that requires proper planning and having a clear view, because obviously contractually you don't have the right to migrate or to assign your licenses, but it is a practice that with the right strategy you can achieve. Now, to tell you about how we've been doing that for some other customers, let me talk to you about two specific use cases that we've recently accomplished with two of our customers. One of the customers is a large retailer organization here based in Europe. They have a total amount of 225,000 employees. They have 3,500 stores across the whole of Europe and also the US and North America, I should say. And they have an annual revenue of $10.8 billion. Now, from an Oracle product stack, they have a huge amount of different products. They have database, they have middleware, they have Hyperion, Siebel, eBusiness Suite, AGG, Adeka, Web Center. A large part of the different Oracle programs that Oracle has. And when we started to engage with them, they had an annual support bill of $12.1 million. And when we were done, they were paying actually only $8.2 million on a yearly basis. So long story short, we achieved $3.9 million savings on a yearly basis. And we made sure that they did not have to have any support indexations for the next 5 years. You probably ask yourself, yeah, but there must have been a deal made with Oracle. How much did the customer need to invest in Oracle? And the answer is 0. Let me tell you what we did. When we started to engage with this customer 3 years ago, we actually said to them, okay, before we start to engage with you, we first need to have a complete and accurate view of all your entitlements. So give me all your ordering documents, support renewals, and license agreements, so I have a clear basis of what you're actually contractually entitled to make use of. We went through that whole exercise and created an effective license position. The second step that we did is that we said, okay, guys, we need to have a clear view of what you're using. So we're going to do an assessment in which we determine what of those programs you actually have deployed, in what quantities, so that we have an effective deployment position and we can reconcile what you're entitled to make use of with what you're currently using and determine your compliance position. The result of that activity was that we identified a number of compliance issues that they were able to fix, and we created a list of all the different products that were on the shelf. And we were absolutely sure that that was the right number of licenses that they had on the shelf, because the methodologies and the scripts that we used are exactly the same as that Oracle would use during the course of an audit. Now, by having that, we actually worked together with the customer to assign the licenses to another legal entity within their organization. And that required a number of engagements with the legal teams to identify what legal entity we actually could use. But after achieving that, we were able to assign all the licenses that the customer had on the shelf to another legal entity within their organization, governed by their own license agreements. And by doing so, we separated the used from the unused licenses, and therefore we separated the support stream from the used and the unused licenses, and we're actually able to bring the support for the shelfware licenses to another entity and killed the support afterwards. Now, obviously, what do you think the response was going to be from Oracle? Oracle, of course, did not like that, because they saw that on an annual basis, they were going to miss almost $4 million. So we already knew that Oracle most likely was going to start an audit. That's the reason why we did the whole internal audit first. So Oracle started to knock on our door, said, hey, we want to do an audit because we want to see what you're actually using. But because of the fact that we already had the results, we could show the LMS organization, guys, this is what we're using, this is what we found, this is the methodology that we've used. Do you have any questions? After 3 weeks of back and forth, the Oracle LMS organization actually understood that the customer was compliant and that actually Oracle could not do anything against the customer. At this moment in time, the customer is still enjoying the fact that although he had to make an investment to work with us and to do the contractual analysis, to understand what they were using, to understand what issues they had from a compliance perspective, and to work with the legal teams to fix it, he's still enjoying today $4 million almost per year in savings. The other use case that we have is a governmental organization based out of North America, where there are 35,000 employees, and this customer was actually making use of Oracle database, middleware, and e-business suite programs. They're a smaller customer than the previous use case that I just explained, but their initial software spend was $2.2 million. After we did our whole engagement, there was a total annual support spend of $1.9 million on an annual basis. So we achieved a cost saving of $300K per year without any support indexation for the next 10 years. This customer had to make an investment, but if you compare the investment that they had to make, 22K, compared to the support savings that they had on an annual basis, I can tell you this customer was more than happy to pay the $22,250. What did we do in this customer? In this customer, we had a similar approach where we said to the customer, okay, first of all, you need to give us your support renewals so that we have a clear view of what you're actually entitled to make use of. They had the challenge that they didn't have all the ordering documents and license agreements anymore from the past. It's a public sector organization, a lot of changes that happened in the organization. But based upon our knowledge repository that we have in-house, we were able to rebuild the contractual terms and conditions that must have been applicable for this customer because we knew when the licenses were bought. And we as a company actually keep record of all the changes that Oracle has been putting through from a contractual terms and conditions perspective over the last 20 years. So based upon that, we were able to recreate, so to say, the terms and conditions that were applicable for the licenses that the customer had. Now, in this case, the customer actually didn't want to do a full deep dive because they actually had a pretty decent SAM team that was actually able to tell what they were using. We were validating the results that they provided to see, does it make sense? Is it complete and accurate? But by doing so, we were actually able to identify how we could get rid of the support indexation and how we could get rid of their surplus licenses. And what we did in there is that by working together with them and reconciling the deployment data that they gathered themselves, and by looking at the contractual terms that they had, we identified the different orders for which we could kill the support completely. We identified the specific orders for which they were able to rebuy new licenses against more favorable terms. And we were able to determine how we could migrate different licenses from certain metrics to another metric in order to get rid of the shelfware licenses. Again, a company that now still is enjoying a support saving of 300K year over year. And I think that is the great thing, that if you really are looking into these kind of things, and of course, it requires a lot of effort to look into all the details, but by doing so, it's not only about avoiding costs because Oracle could possibly start an audit and then may find something in your state, which is always a bit of cost avoidance, is always a bit of money that you haven't spent but you should have spent if Oracle would conduct an audit. This is real cost savings, reducing the bill that you're paying towards Oracle with real numbers. And I think that's the great thing, by if you really put the focus on the right things, having a clear view of your entitlements, having a clear view of what you're deploying, and building a strategy to get rid of your support that you actually do not want to pay, it is possible. So, of course, that brings us to the question, would you like to start saving costs instead of paying more as well? Now, we as a company are completely independent, specialized in doing these kind of activities for all our customers across the globe. And we're more than happy to start helping you as well to start saving costs on your upcoming Oracle support renewals. simply because of the fact we know that a lot of customers will have support renewals that are expiring in May, because a lot of people have been doing business with Oracle in the end of May, meaning that the renewal proposals that are typically sent 3 months in advance have probably already received your mailboxes or will be sent by Oracle support to your organization rather soon. That is for us the opportunity to start seeing how we can help you. Because if you can send us a copy of your upcoming Oracle support renewal, based upon that, we can assess for you what short-term and longer-term cost-saving opportunities you are able to achieve, and what we can offer you in terms of services and in terms of strategy, based upon a fair and reasonable quote, either on a fixed fee or a gain share basis. So with other words, if you feel more comfortable that we work on a fixed fee basis, we're more than happy to do that. If you say, well, I want to put the money where your mouth is, there should be a gain share model in there that if we save money, you get X% of the money that you save. We're open about that as well. But we really believe that leveraging the knowledge and the experience that we have and the local relationship and the local insights that our partner DesTech in North America has as well is really something that you could leverage in order to be the next that can start saving costs towards Oracle on your support bill instead of paying more. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to Holly. Holly is on the call as well, and her contact details are here listed. She's more than happy to work with you to provide more details around it, to work with you to discuss your specific situation in a one-to-one session if you feel more comfortable. But feel free to reach out to Holly in case you have any questions around this. This is what I've prepared for today's session, and that's perfect on time because I left 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for any specific questions in there. So let me just open up the floor to see if there are any questions from anyone that are part of the call that you would want to address to the whole group. So if you have any question, guys, feel free to drop that in the Q&A box in the webinar so that we can just read them out when they come in. I got one question here from somebody from the audience saying, but Richard, if there is really an opportunity to start saving costs, why would Oracle support not try to stop you? That's absolutely a valid question because, of course, Oracle support would not like the fact that we are cutting their support bills. The reality is that what we do in our strategies, in our activities, is not something illegal. We're actually leveraging the terms and conditions from Oracle's own policies and the contractual terms that have been contractually agreed in your favor. The reality is that a lot of organizations do not have that level of detail themselves in order to really assess what can be done, and therefore are typically only being confronted by Oracle support that tells us as an end user, yeah, we can do that, but then we need to do a repricing, so sorry, you can't reduce your support bill. Or, sorry, support indexation is just something that we need to apply across the globe on all the different support renewals, so you need to pay the 4% indexation. And of course, if you do not know as an end user how to tackle that conversation and what rights you actually have that you can address yourself in order to achieve your cost saving, then obviously, yeah, you will just continue to renew and you believe what your Oracle support representative says. But the reality is that every customer that is paying support is actually paying for licenses that they actually do not use and therefore a waste of money. So I hope that answers the question, Anna Maria. Other question from Trevor. What is the longest period of waived indexation you've seen? The longest period of waived indexation I've seen is for the period of 7 years. That is typically if there is a larger deal done, so I would say 10 million plus, then Oracle is willing to provide a larger waiver of support indexation. But it really depends on the deal size. It is also something that you need to, when you start buying new licenses from Oracle or you go to a ULA, either Oracle puts it on the table themselves to sweeten the deal, or if they're not doing it, you should put it yourself on the table to extend it as much as possible. But 7 years is the longest period that I've seen. But that was a customer that paid, on top of my head, roughly $11 million net license fees, and their Oracle was willing to do so. Then there is another question from Eric. Is the strategy applicable for hardware support costs? Is this strategy applicable for hardware support costs? Yes, that strategy is applicable for hardware support costs as well. Because in the end, the contractual terms that we would leverage in order to make your support bill go down would be similar for software as it is for hardware. So yeah, absolutely, Eric, that is definitely possible for hardware as well. Let me see if there are any other questions. Other question from Trevor, have you seen lower than 80% of support fees? Lower than 18% I haven't seen. 18% is the lowest that I've seen. But like I said, that is a support percentage applied for customers that are making huge investments of tens of millions of dollars. So lower than 18 I haven't seen, apart from customers, of course, that have had special arrangements, because that's one scenario that I've seen where a large international company actually moved away from Oracle support and moved to a third-party support vendor. In this case, it was Rimini Street, where this customer actually cut his support bill by just completely stopping the support from Oracle, which was roughly $6 million a year, and actually entering into a third-party support contract with Rimini Street for 50% of the price, $3 million. That is a very, on paper, it looked like a very good cost saving, but what the customer didn't realize themselves, and they engaged us after they made that decision, is that the moment that you do that, that actually nothing can be done with your licenses anymore. And what happened with this specific customer is that this customer actually, half a year later, when they stopped the support from Oracle, decided to divest a large part of their organization to another company. And at that moment in time, they asked Oracle a request to assign licenses to that divested entity. But in order to assign licenses to another legal entity, Oracle requires the licenses to have an active Oracle support contract. So what happened in this scenario, although the customer in the end, in his calculations, had a support fee of 11% instead of the 22% that they paid towards Oracle, ended up in a situation that they had to reinstate the support from Oracle against 150% in order to effectuate the assignment of the licenses to the divested entity, resulting in a situation that they in the end had support from Oracle and support from Rimini Street, and actually had to pay a penalty of 150% towards Oracle. So there you see that a strategy on paper really needs to be well understood before you actually make that decision, because otherwise a decision can look very smart, but can end up in a situation in which it is penny wise, pound foolish. So yeah, so that's a scenario that I've seen where it was on paper lower than 18%. That's a specific scenario. But that scenario is really, really exceptional, I would say. The other thing that I think is really important to mention as well is that working with partners like DesTech locally, instead of with Oracle directly, really has a benefit in getting these kind of discounts, or the best discounts and the local circumstances understood. Because, of course, Oracle and the individual sales reps do have their own interest in the sense of keeping the discounts as low as possible. Whereas resellers, of course, also have a commercial interest, but have a way better, broader spectrum in terms of services and understanding of what is possible and what is not possible. So I think it is worthwhile to mention that working with partners like DesTech in North America is really adding that value as well to getting that lowest cost, so to say. Let me see, are there any other questions that we may have? There is another question from Eric. What we need to know about license and support contract negotiations when moving systems from our premises to a cloud solution? That is a very good question, Eric. To answer that question, we first need to be very clear on what we mean with a cloud solution. And the reason why I'm saying that is that obviously nowadays everything is being called cloud, but from an Oracle perspective, there are different ways of looking at what a cloud environment is. Let me explain to you what I mean with that. If we're talking about public cloud environments like Amazon EC2 or Amazon RDS or Microsoft Azure, then those are the three public cloud platforms by Oracle that Oracle has so-called authorized. And what does that mean? That means that Oracle allows you to count the number of virtual CPUs that are being used in a virtual instance provided by either Amazon RDS or EC2 or Microsoft Azure. And the number of virtual CPUs determines how many processor licenses you would need to have. If we're talking about enterprise edition products. If we're talking about standard edition products, then there is a ratio of 4 virtual CPUs equals 1 processor license. Now, that is a licensing rule that is important to keep in mind because that licensing rule is subject to change, meaning that Oracle, up to its discretion, can decide to change that ratio differently because they now say 2 virtual CPUs counts as 1 processor if hyperthreading is enabled, and 1 virtual CPU counts as 1 processor license if hyperthreading is not enabled. But if they decide tomorrow to say 4 virtual CPUs counts, 1 virtual CPU counts as 2 processors or as 4 processors, that is up to the discretion from Oracle, because that policy document is published online and subject to change up to the discretion of Oracle. So the expectations is that in case you would want to deploy Oracle software on those public cloud providers, that the rules are clear today, but if Oracle wants to push its own cloud strategy, that they will make the licensing rules, the number of licenses that you need to have for such deployment higher, meaning more expensive, because that's what they've done in January 2017 already, because that was the moment in time that Oracle actually pushed through a policy change, and therefore the number of licenses that you need on those public cloud environments doubles. So that's one consideration. Other cloud environments, like for example, the IBM cloud or the Google cloud or a cloud environment that your hosting provider provides, are typically all based on a virtual environment like VMware. And all those environments are not approved or authorized by Oracle as an environment in which you are allowed to count virtual cores, meaning that you still need to count the whole physical capacity of the VMware environment to determine the number of licenses that you have. Now, some other customers then say, yeah, but Richard, we will just go with Amazon or Microsoft, we'll go to a license included option because we're done with Oracle. We don't want to have a license from Oracle anymore. We just want to move everything to Amazon or to Azure. But what you need to keep in mind is that Amazon EC2 is only allowed to provide the Oracle Database Standard Edition 2 as a license included option. And the majority of the customers are deploying Oracle Database Enterprise Edition, where at all times it is a bring your own license model, meaning that you will need to obtain the license from Oracle to be correctly licensed. And why is that? That is because Oracle doesn't allow Amazon or Microsoft in this case to deliver a cloud service with an included Oracle database option in there. Oracle is really restrictive in there simply because of the fact that they of course want to push their own cloud. Now, talking about their own cloud, their own cloud is of course the IaaS, PaaS, if we're talking about technology, and SaaS, we're talking about applications. IaaS and PaaS cloud services from Oracle are running behind compared to the Amazons and the Azures of this world. And what Oracle does with their pricing models, the so-called universal cloud credits, is that they want to make it more and more attractive commercially to start the competition with Amazon or to Azure. And that is a complete different way of, let's say, contracting with Oracle. But won't have any impact on your support renewal, other than if you are willing to a SaaS solution from Oracle, like for example, Oracle e-Business Suite, and you would want to go to the Fusion Cloud, for example, or the Oracle HCM Cloud, then Oracle has a specific program called the Customer to Cloud program. And in such a customer to the cloud program, Oracle is actually providing you a credit for the support for the licenses that are on the shelf, as long as you're paying double that amount into new cloud credits for your SaaS solution. That is an interesting model to, let's say, repurpose the support that you were paying on-premise for your cloud solution, but it's typically not a cost saving, but it's actually placing an investment that you've done for support for your on-prem deployment as a credit in your cloud solution going forward. And that's why I typically don't really talk about that as a saving, because that is more of getting more value or getting more benefits from the on-premise support that you've been paying as a transition towards the cloud. I hope that answers your question, Eric. If not, just drop a note and I can further explain. But that's what I probably think you have been referring to when you were saying, okay, excellent, thanks, great. Perfect. We have another 3 minutes left. So are there any other questions from anyone at this stage? Let me see. I don't think there are any other questions, but that's perfectly fine because we're perfectly on time. So like I said, I hope that everybody enjoyed this webinar where we tried to educate you on, let's say, the contractual clauses that prevent you typically to start saving support on your, to start saving cost on your support bill. I hope I've been able to give you a number of insights with the use cases that we've presented to you on that there actually are opportunities to start cutting costs on your support bill. We are absolutely keen as a team, DesTech and Belay, to start working with you to make sure that you can start saving costs on your upcoming support renewals as well. Like I said, the procedure in order to understand what can be done for your specific situation is rather simple. We just need to have a copy of your support renewals, and then based upon that, we can tell you what can be achieved. And if you're definitely interested, or if you would want to continue to talk further, please reach out to Holly on her contact details that you see on the screen, and we'll definitely follow up with you to discuss your individual situation and see how we can make it fit for your organization. Thank you everybody for joining today's session. We hope you find it useful. Our marketing team will share a copy of this presentation as well as a reference for you going forward. And if there are any further questions at a later stage, feel free to reach out to Holly from DesTech, and we're definitely there to further follow up. Thank you very much and have a great day.